WisconsinEye's Campaign 2024 programming is sponsored by Wisconsin Counties Association, Nicolet National Bank, Wisconsin Hospital Association, Operating Engineers Local 139, the Wisconsin Realtors Association, the Wisconsin Laborers District Council, and North Central State's Regional Council of Carpenters. To support programs like this, please consider a tax-deductible donation at wiseye.org/donate or by texting WisCI to 44321.
Jodi Habush-Sinykin of Milwaukee is the Democratic candidate for the 8th Senate District. The election is November 5th. Jodi Habush-Sinykin, welcome to WisconsinEye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for participating in our candidate interview. I'll start by asking you, what's your campaign's key message? Why are you running for this office?
I'm running for this office because I know that I can offer a pragmatic, progress-focused mission for our legislature. After this many years of the gerrymander, where there has been so much divisiveness and obstructionism in our legislature, I know how important it is to move Wisconsin forward, and I have the skills, the professional experience to accomplish that.
So if you're elected, what's an example of a bill that would be a priority for you to introduce?
Absolutely. With regard to where we're at, Wisconsin, as well as nationally, a bill that I would want to introduce would be one that codifies reproductive freedoms and access for Wisconsin's women. That is so important given the uncertainty at the national level, and also in Wisconsin, given that we still have on the books that 1849 abortion ban.
So you know if you're elected to the Senate, you're entering during a biennial budget year. The state's projected to have more than a $3 billion surplus. What are some top two priorities for you regarding use of that surplus funding?
Absolutely. I think that it's really important that we have this opportunity, and we need to use it now to invest in Wisconsin's future. It's been a shame that we've been sitting on that amount of funds, of our taxpayer funds, when we could be investing in our workforce and in our education. We need to lay Wisconsin's future forward by making those necessary investments in our schools, in our university system, and attracting and keeping a vital workforce in the state.
What about tax cuts or tax reform? Are they part of your platform in any way?
They are. Strategic tax cuts are important. They really are important not only to the folks of my district, but for Wisconsin. I would want them to be focused, again, on working families, keeping them here in Wisconsin or attracting them from other states, given how competitive it is, not just in our region, but nationally for best talent and for workers, as well as providing tax relief for our senior citizens and retirees. That is an area that I think we really need to make progress for tax cuts to keep our seniors in our communities, near their families, and also very much participating in our philanthropies and in the lifeblood of our communities.
You mentioned K-12 education as a priority for you. What specifically needs to change, or what would you do to improve K-12 education?
What we need is a recommitment, a reinvestment of funds. We need to take a portion of that historic surplus and invest and provide appropriate funding for our schools. Our funding levels have gone down, and it's showing in terms of the classroom size, in terms of the teacher pay. We very much need to get Wisconsin back to where we've always been, which has been a champion of education.
So that's an increase in per pupil funding, or are there other areas of school funding too?
Yes, increases for per pupil, as well as making sure that we are appropriately allocating funds for special education, so it is not forcing schools to make those tough decisions to move funds from the general to special education to cover it.
You also mentioned higher education as a priority. What does the future of the state's four-year colleges, two-year colleges, and technical colleges look like to you, and what should the legislature be focusing on?
That is something that has been great concern. I've been reading about it. All of us have been aware of the hit that our UW system unfortunately has taken under this last decade plus under the legislature. We had the tuition freeze and then ongoing defunding by this Republican legislature. We need to reverse that trend and invest in our UW system. We have campuses, like 10 out of the 13 were in the red. We are losing some of our best faculty to our neighboring states and other states. We need to make sure that the pay is there to keep our talent in the state, but more importantly, our young people. That is our future. And we know from the data and studies that those who graduate with a UW degree, over 90% stay in the state. And they contribute to our economy and our future by working and paying taxes and raising their families here. We need to keep them here. There is an enormous return on investment for our UW education. It is a primary driver of our state's economy, and we need to do more to invest in it.
So you support a full funding of the Universities of Wisconsin system?
Absolutely. And that goes for the two-year colleges as well, which are closing left and right. Again, that's very important to local economies in our state and the people who want to have progress in that respect. And same with technical colleges. We need to invest in our young people. The demographics are telling us that our state is losing population and it's aging. We need our young people here.
What do you see as the state's largest workforce development challenge, and how do you propose to address it?
I really just addressed that in my prior answer. It is keeping a vital workforce here that is trained, that is engaged, that is committed to working and helping our economy grow.
And that means investing in higher ed. Is that your main proposal?
Absolutely, and of course training. I've been to a number of apprenticeship training programs around the state, seeing the facilities. That is a huge growth area in our state, and I'm very much looking forward to having more of that.
A few more workforce questions for you. Investments in public and energy infrastructure grow our state's economy. This also provides an opportunity to invest in our state's workforce, but currently there are no requirements for hiring local workers. Would you support a state resident hiring requirement for state, local, and utility scale infrastructure investments?
Yes. Most certainly. I've heard from so many folks about the harm that the repeal of prevailing wage has had on local workers and local businesses. We need to be looking out for Wisconsin companies and Wisconsin workers, and that would be the way to do it.
Employee classification is an issue in the construction industry. Some employers misclassify workers as independent contractors or pay them in cash off the books. This lowers costs by avoiding payroll taxes and unemployment insurance, and it puts compliant companies at a disadvantage when bidding on projects. Plus, misclassified workers may be denied minimum wage protections or overtime pay. Are you aware of this issue, and what do you think should be done about it?
I am aware of this issue, and we need to have legislation that addresses it. I'm aware of Democratic bills that have tried to address this problem, and I support those.
Affordable rental housing is an issue in Wisconsin. Some support government-imposed rent control to maintain affordability, while others argue keeping rent artificially low will decrease rental supply, resulting in increased prices. What is your sense of housing as an issue, and what best addresses rental housing affordability? Is it rent control, building more rentals, or some other solution?
I have been studying this issue as well, not just at the state level, but of course nationally. This is a big issue, and it is going to require a government involvement in terms of increasing the supply at every type of housing. Single-family homes, multifamily homes, senior living, workforce housing. We need to be very strategic and focused on how to address it. And one opportunity for sure is to increase availability by helping developers with more projects, to give them incentives and credits, as well as to new homeowners to allow them to be able to proceed with purchasing homes. We need to really focus on where the problem is the greatest, which is the supply.
Transitioning to healthcare, medical systems are facing numerous headwinds in the form of inflation, workforce development, and issues around Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement, resulting in fewer services and even the closure of a hospital system in western Wisconsin. What would you do to preserve access to care and prevent future closures?
It's an important issue, and there's a number of ways we can go about improving the situation. One certainly is reversing putting an end to this insistence by the Republicans on opposing Medicaid expansion. We are still one of 10 states only that is allowing this billions of dollars of our taxpayer money to sit in Washington and go to other states because we have ideological opposition to it being made available to Wisconsin citizens. So we need to lift that and allow Medicaid to be provided to more people in Wisconsin. As it is, we've lost out in close to $3 billion by that insistence on opposing the Medicaid expansion. So that's first. That's easy. The second thing that we need to do is have our Joint Finance Committee lift this ban that they have on releasing the $15 million for that Western Wisconsin hospital system that you referenced. It has been far too long that this legislature approved it and Governor Evers signed off on it. Let's release that $15 million so it can go to help those communities.
Do you support increasing the Medicaid reimbursement rate to hospitals?
Yes, I do.
Mental health care, growing concern for Wisconsinites, a concern for county and state budgets. What are you hearing about this issue in your district, and how would you address it?
Could you repeat
Mental
that?
health care.
Mental health care. I'm hearing it particularly with regard from the education system. So many teachers and administrators and principals that I have been meeting with have shared this significant concern for mental health resources, mental health or lack of mental health resources. We need to make sure that our schools have the funding to address this critical problem. And at the state level, around the state, it's very important that we provide access to mental health treatment.
How should Wisconsin move forward on the issue of abortion specifically?
We need to provide Wisconsin women, Wisconsin families certainty. We need to have a law on the books that doesn't just restore Roe v. Wade protection when it comes to abortion access and choice, but also provide that certainty with regard to all forms of reproductive care necessary, including IVF, including contraception, problem pregnancies. All of that is medical care, and it needs to rest with women and their health professionals, not politicians.
Transportation. What are the pressing transportation needs in your district, and how important is it that these needs are addressed and for the state to keep on schedule with the reconstruction of our aging interstates and significant corridors of commerce?
Well, I certainly have seen firsthand that we were making progress with regard to our roads and those necessary infrastructure investments. We still need to establish a funding mechanism that is more long-term, that allows us to keep going with the progress that we're making.
And what does that look like in your eyes, that different funding mechanism?
I would recommend a legislative study committee, something that would really evaluate best practices, what other states have done successfully. We don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel, but really come up with a solution that allows Wisconsin to move forward in this regard too.
PFAS and other water contaminants are a concern for a growing number of Wisconsinites. Do you see this as an important issue, and what should be done about it?
Absolutely. As you are aware, I've been an environmental attorney and policy expert for decades now, very much focusing on water quality and wildlife conservation. PFAS is an enormous problem in our state as well as other states. But speaking for Wisconsin, what is so frustrating is that we are now sitting on 450 days of the Joint Finance Committee, which my opponent is a vice chair of, holding on and holding back $125 million, again, that the legislature approved and Governor Evers signed off on, to allow communities in Wisconsin to test for PFAS and to start remediating PFAS. Many other states around the country, New Jersey and Illinois, Minnesota, they have taken those funds and made progress, where over the past year plus, Wisconsin is just holding back. And the Joint Finance Committee is resisting releasing that based on their insistence on protecting the polluters involved, which is not consistent with Wisconsin law. We insist that those who cause the pollution or the contamination have to participate in the cleanup efforts financially and otherwise. So that is not an appropriate reason to hold back these essential funds.
We are down to the final two questions. How would you describe the leading differences between you and your opponent?
Leading differences is very much philosophical. I am someone who is pragmatic and has focused over my career in working across the aisle for reasonable, practical solutions. I worked bipartisan to enact the Great Lakes Compact on behalf of statewide coalitions, and I did the same with regard to Wisconsin's puppy mill bill, bringing people together across the aisle and working out the details in that cooperative fashion. My opponent, Dewey Strobel, as divisive and obstructionist as any legislator in the state, he has very much been a force of partisan divisiveness, and he has held back progress in our state in a number of key respects, most certainly with regard to women's reproductive health and access, our environment, where he has earned a F grade from the League of Conservation Voters, with our economy, and most certainly our UW system.
Final question. Let's say you're elected this fall. You get a magic wand you can use in the state capitol to resolve one issue in a way that brings all parties, all people together. What is that issue?
I'm going to return again to women's reproductive health. It was such a terrible time, those 15 plus months when Wisconsin women were forced to leave the state, to head to Minnesota, to head to Illinois, Michigan for basic care, life-saving care for abortions, for problem pregnancies, for miscarriages. I've talked to too many women and doctors who were put in that position. So I very much will focus my priorities on enacting a law that provides that certainty, that restores Roe v. Wade protections for women and for their health care providers. We need to have doctors feel secure here that they can provide medical care to women at all stages and ages of their life. And we don't have that certainty now, either nationally or at the state level.
Well, thank you, Jodi Habush-Sinykin of Milwaukee, the Democratic candidate for the 8th Senate District. The election is November 5th. Jodi Habush-Sinykin, thank you for talking with WisconsinEye.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
This programming is brought to you by our generous sponsors. Thank you for watching.